Good morning, everyone. We live in a world obsessed with goals. Lose 10 kilos, make $1 million, get 100,000 subscribers. These goals sound inspiring, but let me ask you, how many times have you set a goal, felt motivated for a moment, and then fell back into old habits? We don't fail because we lack ambition. We fail because we lack systems. Goals are results, they're outcomes. They exist in the future and often beyond our control. They tell you what to achieve, but not how. Goals are like destination points on a map without giving you the directions. A goal is, I want to run a marathon. A system is, every morning I will run 3 km at 6 a.m., regardless of how I feel. The difference. Goals are something you reach once. Systems are something you live every day. Every athlete at the Olympics has the goal of winning a gold medal. Every candidate in an exam wants to pass. Every entrepreneur wants success. What sets them apart isn't their goals. It's the systems they build on the way there. When you focus on goals, motivation becomes conditional. I'll be happy when I reach it. But when you focus on systems, you find joy in the process. Progress becomes inevitable. You don't set a goal to be organized. You build a system of daily planning. You don't set a goal to be healthy. You create a system of nutrition, movement, and rest. Systems turn ambition into behavior. When most people think about achieving success, they begin with goals. They picture where they want to be, what they want to have, and who they want to become. They imagine the end point, believing that if they can just define it clearly enough, they'll feel motivated to move toward it. The problem, however, is that the picture we create in our minds is often too far from where we are right now. And when the distance between where we are and where we want to be feels overwhelming, most people stop walking. This is why so many goals remain unfulfilled. It's not because the ambition wasn't strong enough. It's because ambition alone doesn't move us. Systems do. Goals tell us what we want. Systems show us how we behave. A goal might say, I want to write a book. But a system says, I write every day at 7 a.m. A goal might declare, I want to grow a successful business. But a system says, every week, I review performance, collect feedback, and improve one process. The difference seems simple, but it's profound. The goal only exists in the future. Systems exist in the present. We live in the present, and our actions only take place here. So when we rely on goals alone, we're relying on something outside of our current reality. When we build systems, we create habits that make success a natural outcome. When a person focuses on goals, their motivation tends to fluctuate. They feel excited at the beginning, energized by possibility, but soon the excitement fades, especially when results don't show up quickly. Systems don't depend on excitement. Systems depend on consistency, and consistency is what produces progress. A system is not about doing something extraordinary once. It's about doing something small, repeatedly, over time. Just like we don't get fit from going to the gym once, we don't succeed by achieving a single goal. We grow by living a pattern that naturally produces success. Think about it this way. Setting a goal is like deciding to sail across the ocean. The goal is the destination. The system is the boat, the wind strategy, the daily navigation checks. A goal without a system is merely a hope. A system without a goal still moves you forward because it creates momentum. And momentum is far more powerful than motivation. People who operate by systems don't wait to feel inspired. They follow behaviors that generate inspiration through progress. Too often, we set goals that depend on circumstances. We say, I'll be happy when I reach this. But what happens if we don't reach it? Or if we reach it and the feeling fades, which it always does? Systems shift our focus from the destination to the experience of the journey. And the moment we start valuing the process, learning from it, adapting within it, Success stops being something we chase and starts being something we become. Another powerful advantage of systems is that they allow for flexibility. Most people see goals as rigid. You either reach them or you don't, which creates a binary measure of success and failure. Systems focus on practice, not perfection. When the system is disrupted, a missed workout, a bad sales week, it doesn't feel like failure, it becomes part of the learning process. You wake up the next day and continue the routine. Failure doesn't break the system, it actually enhances it because systems evolve through feedback. The best organizations don't achieve greatness because they set bold goals. They achieve greatness because they design strong systems. They don't wait for big milestones to feel successful. They measure success by how well their systems perform today compared to yesterday. If a company sets a goal to become number one in the market, that might inspire the team temporarily. But if that same company builds systems that ensure daily improvement in service, innovation, and leadership, becoming number one is almost inevitable. Individuals who live by systems are no different. They don't wake up every morning asking, "Am I closer to my goal?" Instead, they ask, "Did I follow my process today?" Over time, this consistent adherence to systems shapes behavior, and behavior shapes results. Goals help you plan the future. Systems help you create it. A goal says someday. A system says today. And it's what we do today consistently that decides who we become tomorrow. The irony is that the more we focus on systems and let go of the goal, the more likely we are to achieve it. Because when we engage deeply in the process, we embody the traits required for success long before the success arrives. So the real question is not, what do you want? The more meaningful question is, what process are you willing to live every day? Because the process becomes the path, and the path leads to the destination, whether you're looking at it or not. We often look at people who have achieved extraordinary things and assume they must have set extraordinary goals. We imagine that Olympic athletes wrote down "win gold" in their journals and that CEO wrote "build a $1 billion company" on their vision boards. And maybe they did, but so did everyone else who lined up at the starting line and everyone else who started a business. So if the winners and the ones who fell short shared the same goals, then clearly the goal wasn't what made the difference. The distinction lies not in what they wanted to achieve, but in how they showed up daily to pursue it. Goals point to intention, systems reveal discipline. Every runner at the Olympics starts the race aiming to finish first. Every student studying for an exam wants to pass. Every candidate entering a job interview hopes to get selected. Yet not all of them do. The critical insight is this: the goal is shared, the process is not. What separates the best from the rest is not the grandeur of their ambition, but the consistency of their actions. Most people set goals and wait for motivation. The ones who succeed build systems that carry them even when motivation is absent. Because motivation is fickle. It arrives when the task feels exciting and disappears when it feels repetitive or hard. Systems don't rely on how we feel in the moment. They rely on who we commit to being regardless of the moment. This is the reason the most successful people often appear so focused and steady. It's not because they're more passionate than others. Passion may ignite the journey, but discipline builds the road. The athletes who perform at high levels don't only train when they feel strong. They train especially when they don't. Entrepreneurs don't only work on their business when they feel inspired. They show up when they're exhausted too. They take small, consistent steps forward, not because their goal demands it, but because their system insists on it. When we look at success as a product of goals, it becomes an act of comparison. We measure ourselves against what others have achieved. But when we see success as the result of systems, it becomes a matter of practice. We focus less on competing and more on improving. Systems shift the question from "how far ahead of others am I?" to how much better am I today than yesterday. The latter is a healthier mindset. It builds resilience instead of pressure. The beauty of systems is that they design success to be inevitable over time, not accidental. With goals alone, your measurement of progress is delayed. You celebrate only when you reach the finish line. But with systems, you celebrate progress every day because progress is built into the process. Each run logged, each hour of work done, each book read is a win within the system. When we rely heavily on goals, failure feels fatal. If we don't reach the target by the specified date, we see ourselves as unsuccessful. But systems make room for imperfection. One missed day isn't failure, it's data. The process continues the next day. It allows growth to be a continuous loop, not a single outcome. Winners understand something deeply. The goal matters to start, but the system matters to finish. They hold the goal in their mind while fully investing in the process. They don't obsess about the end. They work the steps. Even when the goal is achieved, they continue the system because it's part of who they are, not something they did just to get somewhere. Organizations are a great example. Many companies set ambitious targets, become number one in the industry, reach a specific revenue mark, win market share. These goals are inspiring in meetings and presentations. But companies that actually achieve them don't focus their energy on repeating the goal every day. They build systems around innovation, customer experience, team culture, and learning. The success that follows is simply the result of processes working well. In the same way, individuals who consistently learn, improve, reflect, and practice become high performers. Whether their goal was audacious or modest becomes less important over time. Their identity shifts from someone who wants success to someone who lives successfully. So the truth is, winners and losers share the same goals. The goal doesn't make the difference. What makes the difference is what we do when no one is watching. What makes the difference is what we do on the days we feel tired, disappointed, or uninspired. The ones who succeed are those who show up anyway, not to chase a result, but to honor their routine. Because when you live by systems, success doesn't happen to you, it happens because of you. And by the time you achieve the goal, you realize the real reward was never the medal, the title, or the number. It was becoming the kind of person who earned it. Most people start their journey driven by a goal, something big, exciting, inspiring. It gives them direction and fills them with energy, but after a few days or weeks, when that initial excitement fades, they begin to feel the weight of the reality in front of them. The work feels repetitive, progress seems slow, doubt creeps in, and it's usually at that exact moment that most people give up. Not because the goal wasn't meaningful, but because they were depending on motivation instead of structure. Systems don't depend on motivation, they depend on consistency, and consistency is what creates sustainable progress. We tend to overestimate what we can do in a short period of intense effort, and underestimate what we can do over a long period of steady effort. Success rarely comes from a burst of brilliance. It comes from the quiet discipline to keep moving forward, even when results aren't yet visible. A goal can get you started, but only a system can keep you going. Think of someone trying to get fit. At the beginning, they may feel inspired, new gym clothes, fresh meal plans, and determination at its peak. They go all in for a week, but then soreness hits, work gets busier, friends invite them out, and suddenly the momentum is gone. Now imagine a different approach. Instead of setting a goal like, lose 10 kilos in 3 months, they focus on a system, exercise for 30 minutes every morning, no matter how I feel. They don't try to make giant leaps, they take small steps daily. Over time, those small steps add up. Progress built on intensity is fragile. Progress built on consistency is unstoppable. That's what systems do. They create a rhythm so you keep moving, even when your emotions fluctuate. They make the process manageable, repeatable, sustainable. Success isn't about doing something big once. It's about doing something small consistently enough that it becomes a part of who you are. That's when change becomes permanent. Let's take organizations as an example. A company might set a yearly goal to increase revenue by 30%. That sounds impressive, but it doesn't guide daily action. On the other hand, a company that builds a system of analyzing customer feedback weekly, improving processes consistently, and training employees regularly creates progress every single day. And when every day gets slightly better, every month compounds. By the end of the year, that company doesn't just achieve the goal. It exceeds it not because they focused on the result, but because they obsessed over the system. The difference lies in where we focus our energy. When we chase goals, we chase moments. When we build systems, we build momentum. And momentum matters more than motivation because momentum carries you forward even when motivation is gone. There's another reason systems create sustainable progress. They help you stay present. Goals are future-focused, which can create anxiety and impatience. Systems are action-based, which bring attention to the now. Instead of worrying about how far you still have to go, you only need to focus on what you must do today. And when today is successful, you build tomorrow on top of it. People often assume that consistency is hard. But consistency becomes easy when the system is manageable. It's hard to wake up every morning and tell yourself you need to make massive change. It's easier to wake up and know your task is simple and defined. Systems turn effort into routine. When something becomes routine, it becomes effortless. Those who achieve lasting success learn to fall in love with the process. They don't wake up thinking about the finish line. They wake up thinking about the next step. They find pride not in completion, but in commitment. They celebrate the days they show up. And over time, that simple act of showing up turns into improvement, and improvement turns into mastery. You don't need to move fast, you just need to keep moving. The most successful people aren't those who sprint ahead. They're the ones who refuse to stop. The great athletes, leaders, writers, they all have something in common. They don't wait for inspiration. They start, they don't rely on passion, they practice, they don't chase perfection, they pursue consistency. Progress created through systems becomes self-sustaining because each step reinforces the identity you're building. Every time you show up, you send yourself a message, this is who I am now. And the moment you start believing that, the process fuels itself. So the next time you're tempted to rush toward a goal, remember this, the goal is not the victory. The real victory lies in the discipline of the journey. Build the system, honor it daily, because when you live through consistency, success stops depending on luck or timing. It starts becoming a natural outcome of who you've become. In the end, sustainable progress isn't the result of ambition. It's the result of alignment between what you desire and what you repeatedly do. And when your habits are aligned with who you want to become, the future takes care of itself. When most people set goals, they tend to focus on what they want to achieve. I want to lose 10 kilos. I want to earn more money. I want to be more confident. It sounds logical. After all, knowing what you want is the first step toward getting it. But there's a flaw in this way of thinking. Goals focus on outcomes, and outcomes are temporary. Once you reach them, the motivation often fades. What creates long-term change is not chasing an outcome, but shaping an identity. Instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? Ask, who do I want to become? Identity drives behavior. When you focus on becoming someone rather than achieving something, your actions naturally align with that identity. Because now, you're not trying to reach a target, you're embodying a way of being. Someone who wants to lose weight might push themselves to diet and train until they hit their goal. Someone who has the identity of a healthy person makes choices aligned with health every day, regardless of whether there's a deadline attached. It's similar to how a great leader functions. A weak leader pursues leadership goals, targets, achievements, recognition. A true leader focuses on living the values of leadership daily. They don't lead because they want to be seen as a leader. They lead because that's who they are. And over time, people follow not their ambition but their consistency. When you center your actions around identity, your efforts feel less like an obligation and more like a reflection of who you are. When someone says, "I am disciplined," they behave differently from someone who says, "I want to be disciplined." The first person sees discipline as part of their identity. It's how they make decisions, handle challenges, and show up in the world. The second person sees discipline as something they chase when convenient. Identity is the most powerful motivator because people are naturally drawn to act in ways that are consistent with who they believe themselves to be. If you believe you are someone who keeps commitments, you will consistently honor them. If you believe you are someone who constantly quits, you will find excuses. We don't act according to our goals. We act according to our beliefs. Consider someone who says, "I'm trying to quit smoking." That language reveals identity conflict. They still identify as someone who smokes but is trying to stop. Now contrast that with someone who says, "I don't smoke." Same action, but different identity. The first is about avoiding behavior. The second is about embodying a belief, and beliefs shape action far more than willpower ever will. Think about athletes who compete at the highest level. They may set ambitious targets, but they don't wake up every morning asking themselves if they feel motivated. They wake up and train because their identity is clear. I am an athlete. It's not something they do, it's someone they are. We tend to admire such people for their discipline. But discipline is a byproduct of knowing who you are. When you think in terms of identity, setbacks don't define you. If your goal is to run a marathon and you miss a day of training, you'll feel like you've failed. But if your identity is, "I'm someone who prioritizes fitness," then missing one day doesn't threaten your progress. It simply invites you to return to your routine the next day. Identity sustains action. Companies operate the same way. A company that identifies as an innovation-driven organization behaves differently from one that merely sets a goal to innovate. The first integrates creativity into its culture. The second may only pursue it when the market demands it. Identity shapes decisions long before results appear. When you focus only on outcomes, success is temporary. When you focus on identity, success becomes a natural extension of who you are. You don't need to push yourself constantly. Your actions feel congruent with your beliefs. The question then becomes, how do we shift from outcome-based thinking to identity-based thinking? It starts with clarity. First, determine the kind of person you want to become. Do you want to be someone who prioritizes health, someone who creates value, someone who practices gratitude, someone who leads with integrity? Once that's clear, ask yourself, what does that person do each day? The actions follow the definition. You don't need to become that person overnight. Every action is a vote toward your identity. Each time you make a choice aligned with the person you want to become, you strengthen that belief. Over time, you become it. So instead of asking, "How do I achieve my goal?" ask, "Who do I need to become to live in alignment with the outcome I desire?" Because when your being aligns with your doing, success is not forced, it is inevitable. And long before the world sees it, you will feel it within yourself. When you live from identity, the journey changes. You're no longer chasing achievement. You're evolving into someone worthy of it. And when that happens, the goal is no longer the victory. Becoming that person is. We often admire people who seem to achieve extraordinary results. We look at successful entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, and leaders and assume they must be operating at a level far beyond what most of us could ever accomplish. We imagine they take bold leaps, make daring moves, or perform massive feats of effort. But if you listen closely to their stories, you'll notice something surprising. Most of them didn't start that way. They began with something incredibly small, a short daily practice, a simple routine, a single disciplined choice repeated consistently. It turns out that greatness isn't about extraordinary intensity, it's about ordinary consistency. We tend to overglorify big actions and overlook small habits. The problem is that big actions are difficult to repeat. They require significant energy, high motivation, and ideal conditions. Small actions, however, are sustainable. When you do something small consistently, it becomes ingrained in your behavior. And behavior, repeated long enough, becomes identity. That's when change becomes permanent. Think of someone who decides to change their life. They're excited, motivated, inspired, so they start with big gestures, radical diets, intense workouts, massive work schedules. For a few days, maybe even weeks, they feel unstoppable. Then something happens, they get tired, life interrupts. Motivation drops, and the big actions, the ones that required high energy, become too difficult to sustain. They stop, and with that stop comes discouragement, guilt, maybe even shame. They believe they failed. But the truth is, they didn't fail, they just chose a strategy based on intensity instead of consistency. Now imagine someone else with the same desire for change, but instead of aiming for dramatic transformation, they focus on a small habit. Just 10 minutes of reading a day, just 15 minutes of exercise, just waking up 30 minutes earlier to plan. It doesn't look impressive at first. In fact, it's so modest that it feels almost insignificant, but it's easy to maintain. And because it's easy to maintain, they do it again the next day and the next. What starts small begins to grow, not by force, but through reinforcement. Consistency creates momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence fuels continued action. It's the compounding effect of small, repeated efforts that leads to remarkable results. Just like interest accumulates slowly at first and then exponentially over time, so do habits. We romanticize the finish line, but we rarely appreciate the first step. The first step isn't meant to be impressive, it's meant to be repeatable. You don't train for a marathon by running 42 kilometers on day one. You start by walking, then jogging, then running just enough to be challenged but not enough to break. It's the same in leadership, business, relationships, health, or personal growth. Change doesn't start with a bold transformation. It starts with a small commitment executed consistently. People often ask successful individuals how they achieved so much. They expect to hear about a breakthrough moment or a life-changing event. But more often, the answer is something like, "I just kept doing it." That sentence may sound simple, but it expresses a powerful principle. Consistency wins where intensity fails. The challenge is that small actions don't give us immediate satisfaction. They don't provide instant results. And in a world conditioned for instant gratification, anything that doesn't offer fast reward feels inadequate. That's why so many people dive into intense action. They're chasing quick proof that they're making progress. But meaningful growth doesn't happen on demand. It happens on schedule, day after day, detail after detail. When you focus on what you can sustain, you shift from chasing to cultivating. You stop treating success as a moment and start treating it as a lifestyle. You stop trying to change everything at once and instead commit to changing something consistently. This approach removes pressure. You no longer need to perform at your best every day. You just need to show up. You don't need to feel powerful. You just need to be present. You don't need to feel motivated. You just need to honor your routine. Those who succeed don't always feel driven. They simply learn not to negotiate with their commitment. Over time, these small acts compound. What began as 10 minutes becomes 20. What started as a simple habit becomes a foundational part of your life. You don't push yourself to do it. It becomes who you are. At that point, success isn't a goal you reach. It's a natural outcome of how you live. So, the question is not how big can I start, but how small can I start, and how consistently can I continue? Because the size of your action matters far less than the frequency of your actions. It's not about doing more. It's about doing something consistently enough that it becomes unstoppable. And when that happens, progress stops feeling forced. It feels inevitable. One of the biggest misconceptions we have about success is that once we find the right system, we simply follow it and the rest takes care of itself. As if the path is linear, predictable, and unchanging. But the truth is, no matter how effective a system may be, life continues to evolve. Circumstances change, markets shift, bodies age, priorities realign. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow, and what feels perfect today may be insufficient a year from now. The value of a system is not just in its design, but in its ability to adapt. Success requires not only consistency in execution, but also courage in evolution. Most people resist change even when they desperately want improvement. They cling to what feels familiar because it gives them a sense of control. And when their system, however flawed, has brought them some results, they fear that altering it may risk everything they've worked for. This mindset keeps many from reaching their true potential. Those who continue to grow are the ones who understand that systems are not monuments. They are living organisms. A powerful system is not static, it's fluid. It learns, adjusts, and improves over time. Consider a great athlete. They train consistently, but they don't train the exact same way for 20 years. Their system evolves as their body evolves, as competition increases, as new techniques emerge. A rigid system would limit them. A responsive system elevates them. The difference is that their identity remains steady. They are still committed to excellence, but the method shifts to match the demands of their environment. This principle applies not only to individuals, but to teams and organizations. A company that keeps the same processes just because it worked before eventually gets left behind. The companies that thrive long-term are those that continually review their systems not to find fault, but to find opportunity. They ask questions like, what's working well? What's slowing us down? What could be done better? Improvement doesn't mean something is broken. It means we want to move closer to excellence. When you review and adjust your systems regularly, you remove failure from the equation. Instead of seeing setbacks as proof of inadequacy, you see them as feedback. And feedback is not judgment, it's data. When a system doesn't deliver the expected outcome, the question is not why am I failing, but what can I learn? This mindset turns obstacles into stepping stones. Think about how we use technology in our daily lives. Apps update, devices upgrade, processes refine. We don't consider previous versions failures, they were necessary iterations to reach the improved version. Growth is not about jumping from version 1 to version 10. It's about version 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3 day after day, revision after revision. In our personal lives, the same logic applies. A system may work well during one phase of life. Single and ambitious, maybe waking up at 5 a.m. is ideal. But when you have children, your system needs to evolve. If your health changes, your system for exercise must evolve. If your business grows, the structure of your work must evolve. Adapting is not abandoning your system, it's strengthening it. The most inspiring leaders and high performers don't marry themselves to a method, they commit to a mission. Their loyalty is to the purpose, not the process. If the process needs refinement to serve the purpose better, they do it without hesitation. That's why they stay ahead, not because they work harder, but because they think smarter. There's humility in reviewing and adjusting our systems. It takes honesty to acknowledge when something can be done better. It takes self-awareness to recognize that what once pushed you forward may now be holding you back. And it takes courage to change direction without waiting for crisis to force it. This approach eliminates complacency. Progress that isn't measured and refined begins to plateau. But when you build a habit of reflection weekly, monthly, even daily, you create a loop of continuous improvement. You don't wait for failure to react, you evolve proactively. So success is not just about creating systems and following them with discipline. It's equally about examining them with curiosity and shaping them with intention. The system gets you moving, refinement keeps you growing. The goal is not perfection. Perfection is static. The goal is continuous improvement, because when your system evolves at the pace of your ambition, growth isn't just possible, it becomes inevitable. And in that journey, you don't just achieve more, you become more. Don't ask, what do I want to achieve? Ask, what systems do I need to build so achievement becomes inevitable? When you shift from a goal-oriented mindset to a system-oriented one, something powerful happens. You stop chasing success. You start becoming the kind of person who attracts it. Thank you, build the system, live the process. Success will follow naturally